Welcome to today's edition of the Rush 24/7 podcast.
Greetings, my friends, and welcome. Great to have you here. Been eagerly looking forward to today's excursion into broadcast excellence. Into the week is upon us. It is Friday. Let's hit it.
Live from the Southern Command in sunny South Florida, it's Open Line Friday.
And where is this damn thing? I just had it here. Well, I'll find it. I just had it here. This is the most important. The unemployment news, the jobs, it was good news. That's all you need to know. It was good news. The unemployment rate stays at 4.1%. The number of jobless claims, which I know sounds confusing for those of you in real Linda, means the number of people applying for unemployment was way down below expectations. But that's not the news. The Hispanic unemployment rate dropped to 4.7%. That is the lowest in the history of the United States. 4.7% unemployment, Latino and Hispanic population. And again, that's the lowest in the history of the United States. Couple this with the news that we have had all week, that manufacturing jobs, the original number was 40,000, and I think the number is closer to 50, maybe 51,000 manufacturing jobs recreated. These are jobs which had been lost, recreated, repatriated, remade here in the United States in the first 10 months of the Trump administration. The economy is just booming. The statistics here are undeniable. And why do you think the unemployment rate for Hispanics dropped to 4.7%? Again, that's the lowest in the history of the United States. Now, you compared that, the Democrat Party, and for that matter, the Republicans for the last 20 years have been doing competing handstands, trying to convince Hispanics that they're all for them by promoting amnesty, by having open borders. And, of course, this didn't lead to any good news on the economy. It didn't lead to any good news for the Hispanic community in terms of employment. So now we got a new sheriff in town, literally, and deportations are way up, although it has been discovered that Obama had reported deporting something like 500,000 illegals. They weren't deported. It was... We'll chalk it up to a clerical error. The point is that is a number that is as large as the population of Atlanta. That is larger than the population of Sacramento. That's an outlier because deportations are way up and the numbers of illegals attempting to get into the country is way down. I mean, the things that have taken place, the dramatic changes that have occurred. The sad thing is that 90% of the American people that watch the news media don't know any of this. Because they watch the drive-by media. The drive-bys are not reporting any of this. Of course, the drive-bys are only reporting that Trump is a scoundrel and he should resign now that Franken's resigned and the collusion with Russia and all that. The news here is dramatic. No matter where you look at it, 4.7%. Unemployment in the Hispanic community. You know, I'm really confused here because I had this story right in front of me and it's not here, but here's the next one I'm looking for. 92% of Democrats uninformed. This is, what is the polling data? It was the company, CBS News. New poll released this week by CBS News found that 92% of Democrats believe Trump advisors had improper dealings with Russia. Only 6% of Republicans believe that. That is an illustration of just how bad, when you get right down, just bad, weak, mainstream news reporting is. 92% of Democrats believe that Trump advisors had improper dealings with Russia. There isn't any evidence of this. There hasn't been a shred of evidence found. In fact, the evidence that keeps being discovered illustrates quite the opposite, that it's the Democrats and Hillary and the FBI that were having all the illicit contact with Russia. We had a blockbuster yesterday about a guy in the DOJ, and there's more news on that today, which we'll get to in due course. But slowing the rate of illegal immigration has to be helping the U.S. economy, and it has to be helping U.S. citizens. It may hurt Democrats and vote fraud schemes and so forth, but it is helping American workers. Flooding the workforce with illegals suppresses wages, and the numbers of illegals even trying to get into the country is way down. 4.7% unemployment in the Hispanic community. I think it's incredible. Bombshell, ready for this? Roy Moore accuser Beverly Nelson admits that she forged the yearbook. You remember what the yearbook, this is the Gloria Allred special. And now Beverly Nelson, who was one of Roy Moore's accusers from 40 years ago, has admitted she forged it. So she has no credibility, none at all. And Gloria Allred still has not released the yearbook so that it can be forensically tested. I wonder why she hasn't. Now we know why. Because the perp has admitted she forged it. Beverly Young Nelson has finally admitted she forged a portion of the infamous Hasbro yearbook that she and attorney Gloria Allred used as proof of her accusations against Roy Moore. In yet another blow to the credibility of ABC News, the disgraced left-wing network downplayed this news by presenting this admission of forgery as adding notes to the inscription. In other words, ABC's not reporting forgery. ABC says Nelson admits that she did make notes to the inscription, but the message was all Roy Moore. ABC News reporter Tom Yamas, Beverly, he signed your yearbook. She says, yeah, he signed it. And you made some notes underneath. Yeah, I did. And then after a woman admits to forging a document used in a campaign to destroy a Republican nominee for the Senate, ABC News moves on as though it's not news of any extraordinary consequence. And this is why people who only watch the drive-by news really don't know what's going on in their own country. They really don't know. You know more listening to this program on a wide variety of issues. You know news from both sides of the aisle. You know news from the world of sports. You know news from the world of economics and business. We cover it all here. And you have an outsized advantage. Of a good percentage of your fellow citizens do not literally know 75% of what you know. They don't know that they don't know it either. By the way, this leads me to something that's got me rather disappointed today. I must admit I'm a bit down. There's a column by David Brooks in the New York Times today, and the title of the column is "The GOP is Rotting." So I figured I had to play prominently in this because I've always played prominently in David Brooks' columns. I'm always held up as one of the primary perpetrators in the dissolution of the party, the damage to the party. But I didn't make the cut in this column. Sarah Palin and Fox News are held out today as the primary perps destroying the Republican Party. Let me give you a flavor. Now, this is newsworthy, folks, because this is the guy the New York Times hires as their conservative columnist. A lot of good, honorable Republicans used to... What? Lindsey Vonn? Yeah, that's coming. Like I say, I can't do everything I'm going to do here in the first segment. Of course we're going to get to Tiger Woods' ex-girlfriend. Absolutely. I think we now know why she and Tiger split up, by the way. If Lindsey Vonn and Tiger were still dating and Tiger goes off to play golf with Trump, what do you think is going to happen when Tiger gets home? So it was going to happen anyway. Okay, now back to David Brooks. A lot of good, honorable Republicans used to believe there was a safe middle ground. You didn't have to tie yourself to the hip of Donald Trump, but you didn't have to go all the way to the other extreme and commit political suicide like Jeff Flake did either. you could sort of float along in the middle and keep your head down until this whole Trump thing passed. Now, this is a false construction. There isn't this grand middle where Republicans of no opinion are lurking, waiting for Trump to go away. Trump doesn't have polarization like that. There's nobody paying attention that is of no mind. Trump has what is called in the media world perfect polarization. What that means is he's got pretty much an equal amount of hate versus an equal amount of love. If you're out of balance in polarization, if 75, 80% of people hate you and 20% love you, then you have a problem. Not personally, but if you're employed somewhere, for example, you're going to have a little bit of a problem. But perfect polarization, Trump has it. In fact, I would actually say that there is a greater percentage of people in the country that love Trump than hate him. I think the idea that half the country hates Trump is overblown, but we'll go with it because that's the theme of the drive-bys. And so David Brooks is saying here that there used to be a place for never-Trumpers to live where they didn't have to really sign on and love Trump, and they didn't have to go to the extreme like Jeff Flake. And I'm sorry, but that's not true. Every never-Trumper is a Jeff Flake. There aren't any mild-mannered never-Trumpers trying to straddle the middle. Part of the definition of being a never-Trumper is being vocal and passionate about it. But anyway, Brooks believes that this mythical place of a peaceful middle once existed, but for some reason it has vanished. Because he says now it's clear that middle ground doesn't exist. That's because Donald Trump never stops asking. Ready for this? First, Trump asked the party to swallow the idea of a narcissistic sexual harasser and a routine liar as its party leader. Then, Trump asked the party to accept his comprehensive ignorance and his politics of racial division. In other words, Brooks is saying that Trump demanded that you ignore and maybe even accept what Brooks claims is Trump's life as a sexual harasser and routine liar. And then Trump forced you to accept the fact that he doesn't know diddly squat about what he's doing. He's completely politically ignorant and racist. And you've had to swallow all of that in order to be a Trump supporter. Now, this is a conservative columnist. This guy with comprehensive ignorance is getting more done in the first year of his administration than anybody David Brooks has ever voted for. Donald Trump is getting more done in the first 10 months of his administration than anybody David Brooks ever wanted to be president. Hands down. Yeah, and I'm going to throw Ronaldus Magnus in there. I'm not saying Trump is a replacement for Ronaldus Magnus. Don't misunderstand here. I'm drawing the analogy for David. David Brooks not a big Reaganite either at the time. But the idea that Trump's got this comprehensive ignorance and is a racist, it makes it impossible for us sophisticated people to ever support him. At the same time, writes Brooks, Trump asks the party to become the party of Roy Moore, the party of bigotry, the party of alleged sexual harassment and child assault. There is no end to what Trump will ask of his party. He's defined by shamelessness, and there is no bottom. And apparently there's no end to what regular Republicans are willing to give Trump. Trump may soon ask him to accept his firing of Robert Mueller. And yes, after some sighing, they'll accept that too. You're right, Brooks, we can't wait for that one. Be a great Christmas present. So Brooks says that's the way these corrupt bargains always work. You think you're only giving your tormentor a little piece of yourself, but he keeps asking. And he keeps asking. And before long, he owns your entire soul. Can you believe this? The torment these people go through? Look, okay, you don't like Trump, fine. But, man, Trump's not corrupting. Trump is cleaning things up. You know, Trump's draining the swamp. The broadcast engineer, Brian, had a point for me today. Trump is draining the swamp in ways we never dreamed it would happen. Look at all the sexual harassers being outed. Look at all the elite, sophisticated, we know better than you how to treat women. We know better than you how to govern. All of these people are dropping like flies, and it's all because of Trump. If Hillary had won, none of this would have happened. And Brooks is worried the Republican. I'll tell you what, Brooks was taking the Republican Party into oblivion. Brooks and his buddies were going to see to it the Republican Party was no different whatsoever from the Democrat Party. And what would have happened to it then? These guys are beside themselves because what Trump is doing is working. He is outsmarting them, and that's the biggest insult because they think Brooks means this. He thinks that he's comprehensively ignorant. These people, these elites, they do think that's the thing that really gives them their self-esteem. That's what they really think. They are that much smarter than everybody else. And they're having trouble dealing with being outsmarted here. They were outsmarted the day Trump won the election. They were outsmarted the day Trump survived the Access Hollywood. They were outsmarted the day Trump survived the Trump dossier. Anyway, I have to take a break. We're just getting warmed up here. Hang on. Okay, so Brooks continues here. It's amazing that there haven't been more Republicans like Mitt Romney who have said enough's enough, I can go no further. And this is the money paragraph for Brooks. The reason, I guess, is that the rot that has brought us to the brink of Senator Roy Moore began long ago, starting with Sarah Palin and the spread of Fox News. The GOP traded an ethos of excellence for an ethos of hucksterism. Now, usually I'm in that paragraph. Usually I lead that paragraph. I've been left out of this paragraph, and Fox News has been substituted. I'm not aware, and it probably has happened, I'm not aware that Brooks has blamed Fox News for what's gone wrong with the Republican Party. I mean, that's the conservative columnist in the New York Times. And get this, exclusive Washington Post, the headline, former Jeb Bush staffer planted anti-Roy Moore coverage in the Washington Post. Former Jeb Bush campaign staffer Tim Miller was responsible for giving anti-Roy Moore information to the Washington Post, according to text messages obtained by Big League Politics. This is a blog at the Post. Tim Miller is the co-founder of America Rising Super PAC, which was paid hundreds of thousands of dollars apiece by the Republican National Committee and the Senate Leadership Fund during the 2016 campaign cycle. He served on the Bush campaign a communications role, has since established himself as an anti-Trump Republican, lauded by the anti-Trump left for his opposition to the Republican presidency. This is a guy working for Jeb Bush, planting anti-Roy Moore stories in the Washington Post. We now have Roy Moore's accuser, Beverly Nelson, admitting that she forged the yearbook that Gloria Allred was waving around. And the drive-by media is not referring to that way at all. They're referring to it as, yeah, she made some notes in the margins. She's admitting that, but that's still all Roy Moore. David Brooks is focused and worrying on the wrong things. His party was headed to oblivion. It's Open Line Friday. Rush Limbaugh executing assigned host duties flawlessly. Zero mistakes. This Tim Miller guy, the Jeb Bush campaign staffer, Washington Post is reporting that he was planting or feeding anti-Roy Moore stories to the Washington Post. This guy, Tim Miller, is such a never-Trumper that he said, I guess it was back in 2000, I forget when he said it, but it was during the campaign. He said Hillary Clinton could beat Donald Trump even if she was in jail. It was in April of 2016. Hillary could beat, this is a Jeb staffer. Yeah, Hillary could beat Trump even if she was in jail. That's how unpopular Trump is. Mr. Miller is obviously got some problems. But this is the kind of stacked deck that is out there. And even with this stacked deck, can you imagine how frustrated the swamp and its dwellers are? No, seriously. These are people who, in their minds, run the world, folks. They don't just run the country. And I want to remind you of something McCain said back during it was a Trump episode involving North Korea, some Trump foreign policy decision or statement, and McCain was beside himself. His point was, I'm going to paraphrase what he said. His point was, why in the world would we throw away the agenda for world leadership that we implemented all over the world after World War II? Now, McCain was being entirely upfront honest about that because that's exactly what the establishment has done. Their view of the United States and its place in the world is entirely different than yours and mine. Now, some of the people I'm talking about literally believe we need to get rid of the whole idea of nation states and borders. Not all of them think that. But they do agree that the United States should have much more concern over the world than just itself. It's an argument Trump made recently in one of the G20 or whatever conference he attended in Vietnam, I think is where it was, where he was talking to all the other attendees. And he said, look, I am going to make America great again, and you should be making your countries great again. And when we're all working together to make our countries great again, it's all going to work out well. The world is going to be better than it's ever been. Well, that's the antithesis of the way McCain was thinking. In their view, the United States, Marshall Plan, rebuilding Europe, NATO, Churchill's Iron Curtain, establishing the Cold War, all of these were constructs of the elite leadership of the United States in the post-war period. And so their purview is not just the United States. Their area of concern, dominant influence, is the world, and primarily the free world. But never mind that. Their idea, their psychology is one of power and control, not just of the United States, but of the world. And in that worldview, the United States can clearly be guilty of things. The United States can be a problem when trying to accomplish their world vision. They view Trump and his nativism and Make America Great as taking the United States out of this quote-unquote worldwide leadership role. The problem with that is the people who have been implementing this so-called worldwide leadership role have not been assuming leadership of the United States or primacy of the United States. They have been agreeing, for example, with the climate change advocates that we're to blame. They have been agreeing that we're to blame for poverty around the world. They've been agreeing with the idea that we're trying to impose our way of life in too many places around the world where it isn't desired. And by that they mean freedom and democracy. And so this cabal of elites either purposely or inadvertently began working at times against the national interests or interests of America as a nation state, subordinating it to the needs of the world. And this, of course, something Trump manifestly opposes and doesn't understand why American leadership should preside over the weakening of America just to make the world fair. Doesn't understand it, and I agree with him. Well, these people really do think that they are special and smarter. Brooks epitomizes this. They really do, folks. They think they're born better. They have better DNA. They have better genealogical traces. They have a better genome. They really believe it. And they have thrown everything they have at Trump. They have conspired, and they have combined all of their massively large intellect, all of their intelligence, and they've fired everything they can at the guy. And at the end of the day, they really haven't made a dent. Now, some of you may think that they have by slowing Trump down. I'm not going to deny that things could have been happening in more rapid clip, but I still think it's almost unbelievable that Trump has been able to get anything done given what has been arrayed against him. But yet he does. The economic news, the reversal of fortune to the advantage of the United States on borders and illegal immigration, the massive amount of regulations that have been canceled, and there's still massive amounts of regulations to go that need to be canceled. Still a lot of things to do, but the momentum is still on Trump's side. And these people are literally beside themselves. Now this sexual harassment stuff's come along and taken them out. I mean, Trump has come along, and who would have ever believed that this would be one of the ways that the swamp gets drained? But it is. And every day, if you pay attention, we are treated to a new round of just abject disbelief on the part of these people who cannot believe what's happening to them. You can put yourself in their shoes and imagine that you are smarter than anybody in your neighborhood. I mean by a factor of 5. It's not even close. You're wealthier. Play the game. Pretend you're wealthier, you're smarter, and you've got people in the neighborhood trying to stop you from what you think would be improvements in the neighborhood, and you think you're going to mow them down. You've got the power, you've got the money, you've got the intellect, and everything you do, you end up as the coyote, and they are the roadrunner. And that's how they find themselves most often with Trump. They can't believe it. And so they're in a continual state of disbelief, which causes them to become even more irrationally angry. And irrationally is the word. Look at Jake Tapper here. A tweet. I've been talking to a journalist who wants to write a piece about her harassment at a major news outlet. But she's been warned by multiple people that if she writes the piece, she'll have trouble ever finding work again. Much remains to be done in this area, sadly, writes Jake Tapper. So I was trying to figure out, what network is this? So I went down the list. What network has not been outed, per se, with a major figure having to resign or be fired because of sexual harassment? So you go to CBS, Charlie Rose. PBS, Charlie Rose. Gone. You go to NBC, Matt Lauer. Gone. ABC. Anybody from ABC fired or gone because of harassment? Snurdly? Would Jake Tapper drop the dime on his own network? I mean, here's his tweet. I've been talking to a journalist who wants to write a piece about her harassment at a major news outlet. Could that be CNN? I mean, he works there. Would he be writing a tweet like this that drops the dime on his own network as a place that would intimidate women that came forward with the story? You think he could be? Okay, then if you think it's, then the two possibilities here are ABC and CNN. If you think Tapper would drop the dime on his own network, I'm not sure that he would. I'm looking here at ABC, which means there's going to be another shoe drop. This is the prelude to it. They're going to be dropping like flies over there. I'm over there, meaning at the drive-by media. This Franken charade yesterday. It's fascinating. I got to tell you, it's fascinating. Everything, every point, every brilliant observation I made is all over the drive-by media today, in op-eds, in news stories, every point that I made. That's gratifying. Let's take a brief time out. It's Open Line Friday. We'll get started on the phone. Yes, I'm going to get... Okay, keep pressuring me here about Lindsey Vonn. What is it about Lindsey Vonn that's got you so fascinated in there? Tiger's ex? Is that what it is? All right, here's the story. Grab audio soundbite number 19. By the way, when I see Lindsey Vonn, you know who she looks like? Well, now everybody's eyes perk up in there. There's an actress out there that used to be on a TV show called Law and Order, and her name is Elizabeth Rome. And I'm telling you, Lindsey Vonn's facially, I don't know much else, a dead ringer. It's uncanny. Doesn't mean anything. It's just I'm just illustrating my observational prowess. Anyway, skier Lindsey Vonn is in St. Moritz, Switzerland, where she spoke passionately about what it means to compete for the U.S. ski team. Well, I hope to represent the people of the U.S., not the president, she told CNN's Alpine Edge. CNN's Alpine Edge. Does CNN have, is that somebody's name? Or is that a show? Alpine, or maybe CNN has its own lodge. Have you ever heard any Olympic athlete in the past ever claiming they did represent the president? Does Ms. Vonn realize half the people in America voted for Trump? Probably not, doesn't care. She's 33, getting ready for the final act. It says, their words, 33 years old, getting ready for the final act of a long and illustrious career. Well, maybe act is right. You know, the fling with Tiger didn't get her a movie deal. No. I don't know that was the objective. She didn't get a movie deal with them. They broke up, and the rumors were because he was catting around. Away from the slopes, Vonn appears willing to put her head above the parapet and speak out about U.S. politics. She says, I take the Olympics very seriously, what they mean and what they represent. What walking under our flag means in the opening ceremony. I want to represent our country. I don't think there are a lot of people currently in our government that do that. She said she would not accept an invitation to the White House if she were to win gold medal at Pyeongchang. Absolutely not, said Vonn. No. But I have to win to be invited. No, actually, I think every U.S. team member is invited, so no, I won't go. And here's the audio. This is from CNN's website. Christina McFarland speaking with Lindsey Vonn. You previously competed in 3 Olympics under 2 presidents. How will it feel competing at an Olympics for the United States, whose president is Trump?
Well, I hope to represent the people of the United States, not the president. You know, I want to represent our country well, and I don't think there are a lot of people currently in our government that do that.
Would you accept an invitation to the White House if you were to win Olympic gold in Pyeongchang?
Absolutely not.
Absolutely not. No doubt about it. Absolutely not. She doesn't think there's too many people currently in our government who are representing the United States well. Let's take a break. Time is of the essence here. Back in just a sec. By the way, I had forgotten Jake Tapper's own producer was fired for sexual harassment allegations. So nobody famous at CNN's gone, but Jake Tapper's own producer, and now he's out there tweeting that he's been talking to a journalist who wants to write a piece about her harassment at a major news outlet, but she's been warned not to do it because she'll never work again if she does it. It's got to be ABC. I mean, could it be PBS? Could it be New York One? I mean, who are the major networks left? And here's what McCain said that I paraphrase. This was at it was in Philadelphia at something called the World Leadership, whatever it was, World Leadership. He was getting the Liberty Medal at the National Constitution Center in Philadelphia. And this is what he said: to fear the world we have organized and led for 75 years, to abandon the ideals we have advanced around the globe, to refuse the obligations of international leadership, and our duty to remain the last best hope of Earth for the sake of some half-baked, spurious nationalism cooked up by people who would rather find scapegoats than solve problems, is as unpatriotic as an attachment to any other tired dogma of the past. So that was a direct swipe at Trump. But, folks, the meat of that quote is this: to fear the world we have organized and led for 3/4 of a century, to abandon the ideals we have advanced around the globe. See, the problem with that is our ideals are not being advanced around the globe anymore by McCain and his people. We did after World War II. We did take the reins. And we did organize and lead the world. And we did establish the idea that America was the last best hope of Earth. But we've abandoned that because the people in that leadership group, the elites, the swamps, have been replaced as they've died or retired by either socialists or communists. So we've gotten to the point now where this precious leadership of 75 world McCain talks about blames the United States. Wherever you go, wherever there's a world body, the European Union, NATO, I don't care where you go, the United States is always having fingers of blame pointed at it. Now, most of this is from a bunch of lesser nations simply trying to fleece us financially, but I don't care what the reason is. And we don't have people standing up for America. We have people joining this parade. Yeah, we got some problems. We've discriminated. Yep, we've been harassers. We've been this or that. Obama led the world in apologizing and blaming the U.S. And that's what Trump has gotten hold of and is correcting. And it's about time. Okay, so it's Open Line Friday. We'll focus on phone calls the next hour. Anything you want to talk about. Does not have to be sexual harassment. Doesn't have to be politics. It probably will be, and that's fine. It can be anything you want. You got tech questions, and nobody better to ask them to than me. Be right back. Oh, my, this is too good. Email reveals effort to give Trump campaign WikiLeaks documents. CNN exclusive. CNN thinks they're really on to something here. You know, Donald Trump Jr. wants to claim privilege, not have to tell investigators what he talked to his dad about after he met with the honeypot from Russia and at that phony meeting. CNN exclusive email reveals effort to give Trump campaign WikiLeaks documents. So what? There's no crime in the campaign at all.
Live from the Southern Command in sunny South Florida, it's Open Line Friday.
I hate it when these show intros interrupt me. But the computer fires those babies. There's nothing you can do about it. Folks, greetings. Welcome back. Great to have you. Rush Limbaugh, having more fun than a human being, should be allowed to have rhetoric and resonance in dulcet tones, reverberating coast to coast, east to west, north to south. EIB Network at 800-282-2882. Okay, let's take this first one. I'm just going on the graphic on the screen. I'm not sure of the details here, but I think I get it. CNN exclusive. Email reveals effort to give Trump campaign WikiLeaks documents. Now, they're trying to make a scandal out of this, and this offends the heck out of me because the scandal is these are the people that created and wrote, bought and paid for the phony Trump dossier. The Clinton campaign, the Hillary campaign, you know the drill. They commissioned that dossier to be written. It's filled with unverifiable lies. The dossier is then used as the basis for this entire caca collusion investigation, for which there remains zilch zero nada evidence that Trump colluded with Russia to steal the election from poor Mrs. Pantsuit. Now, somebody's found an email that says there was an effort to give Trump campaign WikiLeaks documents. So what? These are the documents that WikiLeaks published. Even if the story is the Trump campaign wanted them. So what? But Mr. Limbaugh, they're illegal. They came from a hack. Don't talk to me about illegal. It's the Trump dossier that was illegal. It's the Trump dossier that's phony. It's the Trump dossier that's tainted. It's the Trump dossier that's opposition research. The WikiLeaks documents have never been denied by John Podesta or the Democrat National Committee or the Clinton campaign. We still don't know who hacked. This is being laid off on Russia, and I suspect that's going to be the connection here that CNN's trying to draw. The story is that CNN hacked the DNC network and computers, and then Podesta's emails, which are a large part of the WikiLeaks files that ended up during the campaign, those were not hacked. Those are the result. Well, it wasn't a hack as you think of it. Podesta fell for a phishing scheme, and he ended up opening up his computer to bad actors, as you will. And so the emails that he had sent and was sending and receiving ended up all over WikiLeaks. It was fascinating to me. Not one email from Mrs. Clinton, to or from, was ever displayed on WikiLeaks, but that's another side issue. So now what CNN is trying to say, I will bet you, is that the Trump campaign went to whoever hacked the DNC and asked for the documents, the WikiLeaks documents. And with this, they're going to try to prove collusion, that Trump was working with the Russians. It is becoming preposterous now how they will not let go of this. Email shows effort to give Trump camp WikiLeaks docs. And so they're trying to create a brand new scandal out of this. But that the wording, Trump camp was sitting there minding its own business, and somebody approached them and wanted to give them these WikiLeaks documents. Not saying the Trump campaign accepted them. They're just trying to prove that there's a connection with Russia and agents and collusion. And again, folks, the collusion that we know happened was between the Hillary campaign in Russia and the FBI and Russia, not the Trump campaign. Let me jump forward into a story that I had slated for later after the tax cut news, but I'm going to go ahead and get into this because we had what I think was a bombshell yesterday, and it didn't get much play, but it's starting to now. Byron York at the Washington Examiners picked this up. Dossier author Christopher Steele was in contact with Obama Justice Department. So here again, we have evidence that it was the Obama FBI and the Obama DOJ that was in cahoots with Fusion GPS and Hillary campaign and the law firm and the guy that wrote the dossier, Christopher Steele. For the baby boomers in the audience, let me ask you a question. Snerdley, you're a boomer. I'm a boomer. Brian, you're not. Wendy, on the cusp. You remember the name Alexander Butterfield? You rings a bell, but you don't know from where. Well, let me tell you who Alexander Butterfield was. Alexander Butterfield was testifying one day during the Watergate hearings. And out of the blue, Alexander Butterfield revealed that there was a taping system in the White House. And it brought everything on the Watergate committee to a screeching halt. You mean everything we're looking for, said Sam Ervin, is on tapes? Butterfield said, I believe so, sir. It was a stunning bit of news, and right there you thought, whoa, this changes everything. When it was learned, I say we have a similar moment. When it was learned that Hillary Clinton's campaign and the Democrat National Committee paid Fusion GPS to write that phony Golden Showers Trump dossier, that put a whole new light on things for me. And actually, I didn't even need a new light on things because, folks, and your regular listeners know it, I've thought this collusion attack and allegation has been bogus from the get-go because I remember everything everybody was saying about Russian collusion all during the year 2016. I remember Obama poo-pooing it. I remember Obama saying it would be impossible for the Russians to hack our elections, federal elections, not possible. I remember the book that was written about the Clinton campaign. 24 hours after the election, the book says the Clinton campaign decided to launch as a political operation the idea that she lost because Trump colluded with the Russians. I've known this was manufactured and bogus from the get-go. If Trump were actually colluding with the Russians for all of that time, it would have been found out and he would have been toast. My only point is I never believed it. Just like I was able to tell you when we found out that Brian Ross was the guy behind this story that Trump, as a candidate, had instructed somebody to call the Russians, and then they had to correct it. I told you before ABC corrected it to ignore the story that it's Brian Ross and there's nothing to it. And the following Monday you were calling. How do you know? How did you know? Same way I know and knew this Russia collusion story has never been reality. Not about Trump and Russia. And then we had this shocking news that the Hillary campaign and the Democrat National Committee paid tens of thousands of dollars to this Democrat-led company, Fusion GPS, to write that Golden Showers dossier. Then we found out the FBI also paid Fusion. And then we found out about Peter Strzok in the FBI. And now we're learning that Obama's Department of Justice was in contact with Fusion GPS after the election. This is the story we had yesterday about a guy named Bruce Orr, O-H-R. He served as Associate Deputy Attorney General during the campaign. That placed him just below on the organizational chart the Deputy Attorney General, the now famous Sally Yates, who ran the day-to-day operations of the DOJ. During Obama, in 2016, Orr's office was just steps away from Sally Yates's, who was later fired for defying Trump's travel ban executive order. She then became a prominent anti-Trump heroine upon leaving the Justice Department. Unbeknownst to investigators until just recently, Bruce Orr knew Christopher Steele and had repeated contacts with Steele when Steele was working on the dossier. This puts a connection between the author of the dossier and the Obama DOJ. This equals collusion. Now, we don't know what was said. We have to be upfront and candid about this. We don't yet know what was said, but what in the world is a number 3 in command, essentially, at the Department of Justice doing, talking to the former MI6 agent who has been paid to write this phony Trump dossier by the Clinton campaign after the election? After the election. Unbeknownst to investigators, until recently, Bruce Orr knew Steele, had repeated contacts with Steele when Steele was working on the dossier. Orr also met after the election with Glenn Simpson. Glenn Simpson is the head of Fusion GPS, which is the opposition research company paid by the Clinton campaign to write the dossier. So instead of Trump fingerprints all over this, it's Obama fingerprints. It's Obama's DOJ. It's Obama's FBI. After the election, working with the people who put together this dossier. Remember, it wasn't until sometime after the election the dossier became the basis of the investigation of Trump collusion at the CIA with Clapper at the Director of National Intelligence, Comey. And remember, McCain's fingerprints are on this. When McCain heard about the dossier, he actually dispatched an aide to fly to Europe and get a hard copy so he could have it in his hand to give it to people. Because they were so eager to nail Trump. And McCain didn't even stop to ask whether or not it was true. Didn't matter. They all wanted it to be. Now, word that Orr met with Steele and Simpson was reported yesterday by James Rosen at Fox News. Shortly after learning it, They demoted Orr, the DOJ. He's still there. They demoted this guy, taking away his associate deputy attorney general title and moving him full-time to another position running organized crime drug enforcement. Why is he still there? Why was he still there? The news also stunned some of those who had been investigating the matter. Yeah, they knew that knowledge of the dossier extended to some in the FBI. That was bad enough. I mean, the question is, how could the FBI endorse and consider underwriting one campaign's dirt-digging operation in the middle of an election? Which is what happened here. This dossier was a phony baloney created document that had no basis in fact, that was passed off as serious intelligence. It was accepted by all of these parties as serious intelligence. I'm here to tell you, I'll go out on a limb. I think every one of these people, from Brennan at the CIA to Clapper to everybody else in this loop, I think they knew this dossier was bogus and phony, and not one word of truth was in it from the get-go. And they didn't care. They thought they'd have the ability to make and portray this as legitimate, serious intelligence. They'd already set the table for Trump-Russia collusion. It had been a story that had been out there for months. They control the media. They control the deep state. In their mind, I'm sure they thought they'd have no problem selling this. And now, as time has dragged on, and the dossier has failed, it was Comey that got fired, not Trump. It was Hillary that lost the election, not Trump. Everything they've done designed to get Trump has actually taken out some of these guys. And now we're learning that there was contact between the Obama Department of Justice and the Obama FBI and the people who wrote and paid for the dossier. This is bombshell. Now here's CNN in the midst of all this, trying to hide this and counter it with the fact that there's some email that's been discovered that somebody tried to give WikiLeaks document to the Trump campaign. And what they're trying to do there is the Russians, because they obviously hacked the Democrats, the Russians were trying to get Clinton defeated. They wanted Trump to win, and so they offered the WikiLeaks documents to Trump. Doesn't matter whether Trump took them. It's all about the collusion. CNN's making a fool of itself. But their audience is going to lap it up. You know, all 200,000 that watch them are going to lap this up. The other thing I saw right before the hour began, you know, George Papadopoulos, the other guy that's been pursued here with what? Flynn, that's right, Flynn, that Mueller was chasing. And not Flynn. I want to lump him with Manafort, but it's not Manafort either. But he was a low-level campaign player, and they've indicted him or done something. Anyway, his fiancée, CNN just had a tape, an interview with his fiancée, dropping the dime on the guy. She can barely speak English. She's, I guess, Latvian, Estonian, or Russian. And the CNN info babe doing the interview. So, in your opinion, your fiancé was not the low-level campaign player the campaign says he was? Oh, no, he was not. He was not. No way low. No, not low. Totem pole, no. How do you know? Because my fiancé told me he was not low on totem pole. Oh, geez, okay. CNN is trying to pull out all the stops. They haven't stopped. They're going to keep on. It's now becoming hilarious. Okay, picking up and where we left off to the phones, we're going to start in Orlando. Dennis, great to have you with us in the program today, sir. How are you doing?
Good. How are you, Rush? Thanks for taking my call.
Yes, sir.
There's two quick points I'd like to make. The first is in 2008, I was watching Fox News, and Obama was talking to a bunch of college kids. He was telling them not to listen to Rush, to listen to other news outlets. You'd be better off. And I'm thinking, what is it about this guy that Obama's so afraid of? And I started listening to you. And I've been listening to you ever since. And the reason why is that you speak the truth. That's what he's afraid of. So you back it up with facts.
I'm so happy to hear that Obama told you not to, and it's stirred you into doing so.
I'm thinking, what is it about this guy? Why is he afraid of him? Why doesn't he want me to listen to him? And the other one is do you think Hillary will ever be brought up on charges? Because a lot of us are really,
You know
really,
what? I got to tell you, you've been listening since 2008, Dennis? Is that right?
Yes.
I asked this question. I am asked this question numerous times. I've been asked this question about 10 times since Thanksgiving, maybe the beginning of November. And every time I answer this is what I really think. I am hit upon people getting so mad at me, claiming I should stop saying this because of the influence and power that I wield. My instinctive answer, do I think Hillary will go to jail? Do I think Hillary will be indicted? No. And every time I say that, people say, you can't say that. You got power. People listen to you. Your influence. If you say it, she's going to skate. You got to say yes. Not only is she going to, she should. Let me tell you why I say it, folks. James Comey had all the evidence he needed to indict her. That's why I kind of laugh when people, have you heard the theory that Mueller, the reason he has all these pro-Obama investigators is because he's really, at the end of this, going to indict Hillary and he doesn't want any allegations of bias. Folks, they're not going to indict Hillary. They overlooked every crime she had committed with her email server, trafficking in top secret documents. That was the whole point of Comey's July 5th press conference. She has been exonerated. She said, well, we couldn't find any intent. They've got everything they need right now and have had for a year and a half or longer. They're not doing anything with it. All right, this is good. This is good. Sarah Carter, a great info babe, great reporter at Circa News, is reporting that Devin Nunes, who's back running the House Judiciary House Investigations Committee, whatever. I get these committee names confused. He took a break from the investigation on the Russian portion of it, on the basis that he was tainted. The pencil neck Schiff said he was tainted because he'd gone to the White House. He'd seen some intel that was helpful to the president. He went public with it. And he didn't share it with the Democrats on the committee, so they said that he's tainted. So there's been an investigation. Devin Nunes was entirely exonerated, not guilty of anything. So now he's back, and he says that he's going to be issuing subpoena today for Bruce Orr. Bruce Orr, the guy we told you about yesterday, right-handed Sally Yates during the Obama administration, who was chatting up Christopher Steele about the Trump dossier prior to the election. Or met with Chris Steele, who wrote the Trump dossier before the election. Might have assisted in funding the dirty dossier. Or met with Chris Steele prior to the election to fund the dirty dossier. How the deep state operates is being uncovered here, hit by hit, how the administrative state operates. This is a bombshell. Meanwhile, we have an audio soundbite. I'm sorry, the fiancée of Papadopoulos is not Estonian, Latvian, or Russian. She's Italian. And we have the audio sound. No, we don't. Let's see. Well, I don't have it here. I thought I did. Let me get back to the phones while I look for it. Here is William in Cleveland. Great to have you on the program. Hi.
Mega Dales, Rush. I've been listening to you since 1987. Before you had for Dave for the bake sale you had for Dave up in Colorado. I was calling to know that we have a president that's a street fighter. He's not going to back down because of the fact that he was raised and taught about being for God, home, and country. Plus, he came up earning his way. He won and he lost lots of money. He knows the inside, running a business and everything, and he's going to run the country the same way. So that's why I voted for him.
You don't have any regrets about voting for him?
Not at all. And the thing is, usually when I answer a question when I go apply for a job, I skip over who my ethnicity is because I am an Afro-American. I consider myself an American. That's all I am, is an American. And that's why I'm for America, because raised the same way.
Wow, that's incredible. So you're not hyphenated at all. You just call yourself a flat-out straight
I'm an American.
Okay.
I am an American. I believe in our country. I believe in God, home, and country. This country has given us many opportunities. Even when we fail, it allows us to be able to take it back on our feet if we're willing to work, and we can achieve despite whatever else is going around. And that's why I like Trump, because Trump is a fighter, and he will not quit. Use the tools he has at hand, and he's going to succeed because of that. He's not going to allow his party to beat him. He's not going to allow the Democrats to beat him. He's not going to allow the media to beat him.
Let me ask you a quick question. Is there anything that the mainstream media has reported or tried to report that's made you stop and think from it? Has there been a single instant where they've made you doubt your support for Trump?
Never. Remember, I listened to you since before 1987, just about. And I know for a fact you said the media lies and cannot be trusted. And it's been proven time and time and time again. They never tell the truth.
There you go.
Why would I believe them?
There you go. Dan's Bake Sale. That was like in 1989. We
Yes,
started
sir.
the program like in late 1988. You're a lifer. You've been here. I can't ask for more than that.
Plus, on top of that, I remember you told me the only thing he made a mistake was he didn't make enough cookies. He could have made a killing that day. I never forget that when you said it on the air.
Oh, well, this guy, Dan, never knew the opportunity he had. This is the most amazing thing. You want to hear the Dan's Bake Sale story real quick?
Yeah.
Let me tell it to you real quick. I don't want to belabor this because there are other things they want to get to, like Trump doing a rally for more tonight, but he's not going to Alabama to do it. This is very clever. Back in the early 90s, this is after Bill Clinton had been immaculated, for some reason, a bunch of school kids started doing bake sales. Well, but that came later. The reason for the bake sales was originally to raise money for the school or whatever. And we're talking first and second graders. The kids weren't doing the baking; their mothers were. And the kids were taking the baked goods to school, and they were raising money with the bake sales, and it was a bit of a phenomenon. And then, at the same time, Clinton is talking about how he cannot. I haven't worked on this. I've worked hard on this than anything I ever worked on in my life. I'm sorry, but I am going to have to break my promise. I simply am not going to be able to cut your taxes. Bush didn't tell me how bad it was. I had no idea that things are as bad in this country as they were. They shielded that from me during the transition. I got in here, folks. I'm sorry. I can't do the tax cut. And he started whining and moaning about the deficit. So some liberal teacher out there, I think it was in Kansas, but I'm not sure, decided that her next bake sale, they would send the money to the president to help reduce the deficit. This is a bake sale raising $300. Okay, so, and the media started talking about a wonderful civic lesson this is. Young students learning the importance of the budget in the second and third grade. And, folks, I was right in there blowing that out of the sky. I said, these kids aren't learning anything. They're being propagandized. Their parents are already overtaxed. It's not that there isn't enough money being sent to Washington, certainly bake sales or anything else. That reason to explain the deficit. It's because those people in Washington have no spending discipline. But nevertheless, it was such a great, great liberal opportunity. And so bake sales sprung up all over the country with the objective of sending the money to Clinton. The kicker was that Clinton kept it. That's what I couldn't believe. This guy actually kept the money these little kids were raising from selling their little divinity packages and whatever, their baked products. He was keeping the money and thereby furthering this bogus lesson that little kids even need to send their money to Washington to help with the budget. I correctly identified this for what it was. This was an attempt to get young skulls full of mush early on comfortable and even patriotically associated with the idea of sending their money to Washington, even after their parents had paid their taxes and all that. And I excoriated Clinton for keeping the money. I said, that is irresponsible. You want to teach the lesson, but send the money back to him. Be magnanimous. Be big. Money's not going to matter a hill of beans to the deficit. Send it back to him. But he didn't. He kept it, meaning the government kept it. Well, during all this, a guy called my program and complained that he couldn't afford a subscription to the Limbaugh letter and asked me for a free subscription. And back then, I wasn't in the practice of giving things away like I am today. And I told the guy, his name was Dan, do a bake sale. Do a bake sale. How long would it? You could do a bake sale in 10 minutes and raise the $24 needed to buy a subscription. And he hemmed and he hawed. You know, Dan's elevator didn't go to the top floor. But eventually, he decided to do it. Well, that created a chain reaction of thousands of people in the audience wanting to be in on it. And so Dan's bake sale started as just some whatever little Dan was going to do wherever he lived into a gigantic bake sale with 90,000, 70, I forget what it was, 70, 80,000 people showed up. Fort Collins, Colorado. Senator Hank Brown was there. I mean, NBC News was there. They called it the conservative Woodstock. I flew out there, of course, to make a perfectly timed speech, and it was pouring. And we landed at the airport and had to take a helicopter up to Fort Collins. And I'm telling you, the interstate heading up there was backed up. It was stopped, and I couldn't believe it. There were people all over the country who phoned in and offered billboards on the highways leading into Fort Collins months in advance, advising that it was going to happen. We had restaurateurs from New Orleans and all over the country flying into Fort Collins to set up booths. And it was all called Dan's Bake Sale. Now, remember, the whole point of this is for this schlub to raise $24 to buy a one-year subscription to the newsletter. And this guy didn't bake enough cookies for this massive bake sale with 70,000 people. He ran out of cookies in 5 minutes and started asking other vendors if they would give him some of their stuff to sell. Talk about, that's what the caller means, blowing an opportunity. And then after that, Dan tried to set up his own bake sales, thinking all he had to do was somehow get on another radio show and say he was doing another bake sale in some city, and 70,000 people would show up. We got wind of it here. I got a call one day. Are you aware that Dan's doing another bake sale? I said, no, I didn't. You mean you're not part of it? They said, no, I'm not. So we figured out Dan was, the guy was, the caller talked about how he blew an opportunity, and he did. He never got it. He never understood the opportunity he had. I mean, to show up at this. Oh, that was the funny part, too. Yeah, it was pouring rain. It was pouring in the helicopter. When we landed short of Fort Collins, had a chopper in there because we couldn't have gotten there. Got there, we drove. The interstate was backed up, so we choppered in there. And the moment my helicopter touched down and got off, the skies cleared. And it was a radiant, almost cloudless, sunny day within moments of my arrival there. And it wouldn't have mattered. The rain wouldn't have stopped what was going to happen anyway. I mean, literally 70,000 people. And here is the kicker. When it was all over, there was no mess. Local Fort Collins media was astounded. There was no trash. Now, you take a look at the trash that the vagina hat ladies left after all their protests the day Trump got inaugurated, but there was no mess in Fort Collins. But as I think back on it, this guy, Dan, we just never saw the opportunity. If he would have just invested in a 2-hour supply of cookies, he's the reason it's happening. Well, I, of course, became the reason but it was Dan's bake sale, not the EIV bake sale or Russia's bake sale. We did all of this to poke fun at Clinton taking the money of second and third graders, their little bake sales in Kansas and Wyoming, and wherever else. Anyway, I'll take a brief time out, my friends, and I'll try to find this soundbite with Papadopoulos' fiancée, because I obviously got something wrong. She's Italian. She's not Estonian, Latvian, or Russian. So we'll find out. We'll be back after this. Don't go away. I knew this was going to happen the moment I started telling the story. I checked the email during the break. Why don't you do things like that anymore? Dan's Bake Sale. Folks, I can't. I am too famous to do stuff like that anymore. And it pains me. But I can't do it. I mean, even back then, it was 70,000 people who showed up. And they weren't prepared for it out there. I mean, the stage was nothing more than a horse excrement platform in the center of town that was elevated by about 3 inches. I nearly got run over by Hank Brown's horse. I had to walk out. They gave me a police escort behind a horse, and the horse stopped and almost kicked me. I was right behind it, had my hands on its butt. I can't. I would love to, but it's just it. Believe what? Oh, I'm too famous. No, I don't expect them to believe it, but I'm too famous. I can't do stuff like that anymore. Anyway, the reason it was in Fort Collins because Dan lived in Fort Collins. And remember, his original complaint was his wife wouldn't let him spend the money because she was not a fan. She wouldn't let him spend the money on a subscription to the newsletter. So that's when I suggested they do a bake sale and leave his wife out of it if she didn't want to be part of it. Yeah, he was. Oh, that's right. He was getting Xeroxed copies. That's what blew me up. We had a copyright and an intellectual theft issue going on, and this guy did not know that he was admitting to a crime by saying he was copying issues of the Limbaugh letter and passing it around. So I had to put a stop to that. We insisted that he do the bake sale idea. Now here, this is not the soundbite I heard. This is Papadopoulos' fiancée, Good Morning America Today with Stephanopoulos. And the question is, from what you know, will the president be happy with the story your fiancé, George Papadopoulos, tells in this investigation?
I think he tried to dismiss George as a coffee boy, so I'm sure he will not be happy to read that there are consistent evidences that he was not a coffee boy.
From what you know about his story, what do you think the title of that story is?
I don't want to spoil his premiere, but I think he has been sort of the first domino in the Russian Gate.
First domino in the Russian Gate. When she was on CNN just now, she said she knows that he wasn't a coffee boy or a low totem pole player because he told her that he wasn't. Now, grab soundbite number 21. CNN is breathless again. They think, and they're like a parody. They don't even understand, but they think they've got Trump. Now, they think they've got him in this WikiLeaks business that the Trump campaign wanted. Well, the Trump campaign was offered WikiLeaks documents. So here's Wolf Blitzer this afternoon setting this all up.
Hello, I'm Wolf Blitzer. It's 1 p.m. here in Washington, 8 p.m. in Jerusalem, 9 p.m. in Moscow, wherever you're watching from around the world. Thanks very much for joining us. On the defense, he's been called a coffee boy, dismissed by the president and his campaign, but just in, the fiancée of the former advisor who pleaded guilty to lying is now speaking to CNN about why they're wrong. Also, a CNN exclusive, a newly discovered email shows an effort to give the Trump campaign hacked documents from WikiLeaks. Did the president know?
So what if he did? They weren't false. You guys were the one trafficking in phony, made-up opposition research and treating it as low as legitimate intel. I wish I weren't, but I'm out of time, folks. I've got to go. David Gregory followed Wolf Blitzer on CNN. This proves collusion. The Russians or somebody offered Trump campaign the WikiLeaks doc. Collusion? I'm enjoying watching these people dig their own graves, especially if they don't know what's happening. They think they are triumphing here. Well, it depends on how you want to look at it. I mean, you could say that the Republicans, by opposing Roy Moore at the outset, were prepared to make a political sacrifice. I mean, by opposing Roy Moore, they were basically ceding the Senate election in Alabama to the Democrat. At first, you could say that was a show of principle, but that's not their position now, is it? The position now is it's up to the people in Alabama to decide, and we, meaning Mitch McConnell and guys, we're going to back off. And we're going to let Steve Bannon determine what happens down there. And whatever that is, we'll live with it. And if Moore gets elected, his first stop's going to be the Ethics Committee, where we're going to harangue this guy so long he'll never have a chance to be sworn in. Isn't that pretty much the official Republican? I mean, that's what they're saying. Well, okay, not the official, but isn't Mitch McConnell been quoted as referencing the fact that Moore is going to have to go before the Ethics Committee? The likelihood, if he wins? The point that I'm talking about, an email. I got an email from at the top of the program in the break here at the top of the hour that the Democrats are trying to get away with occupying moral high ground when they're not losing anything by getting rid of these guys. They're not losing anything by getting rid of Franken. And they're not losing anything by getting rid of Conyers. But the Republicans, according to the email, were willing to lose a Senate seat to maintain their morality by opposing Roy Moore. And the emailer says, you need to point this out. Republicans deserve credit. The Democrats are a bunch of phonies. Well, look, if I think the Republicans should be happy that there's anybody out there that wants to look at them that way in this. But why are you frowning? Why is something not registering with you on this? Well, what was stupid? What was the stupid political play? Oh, throwing away the Senate. You mean it was stupid to stand on the high moral pedestal and to say, we don't want you, Roy Moore. We're not going to let you in here. Who do you think you are? We don't want you. That was a phony, baloney, stupid mistake to make, given we're at war with the Democrats. All right, well, we'll see. There's some interesting stuff about Alabama here today. By the way, greetings and welcome back. Rush Limbaugh at 800-282-2882 if you want to be on the program. This story is from the Montgomery, Alabama Advertiser. An anti-Roy Moore ad is misinforming Alabama voters about their anonymity in the voting booth, according to the state's Secretary of State, John Merrill. John Merrill's office on Tuesday released a statement on an ad representing a targeted effort to misinform and confuse voters. The ad featured a voiceover and a stand against Roy Moore graphic. The ad is paid for by a Doug Jones PAC called Highway 31. And the ad basically said, your vote is public record, and your community will know whether or not you helped stop Roy Moore. Well, now that's flat-out BS. Your vote is not public. Your vote is private. Now, they can tell whether you voted or not, but they can't legally go in there and find out how you voted. You have to tell them. So an ad was run. This is it was a shaming attempt. It's kind of along the lines of people lying to pollsters because they're afraid the pollsters will find out what they really think. So if it becomes, well, look at Trump in the presidential race. I'm voting for Trump, but everybody in the media thinks I'm stupid, and it's embarrassing, so I'll lie, and I'll say I'm voting for Hillary. Don't want the pollsters to think, and don't want the media to think they're stupid. Well, in this case, it's a reverse shaming effort. The Doug Jones PAC is running an ad telling Alabama voters that if they vote for Moore, that everybody's going to know about it. And likewise, if they don't vote for Moore, everybody's going to know about it, and everybody's going to love them, and everybody's going to praise everybody that doesn't vote for Moore. Secretary of State made it clear that no individual voting record is made available to anyone at any time, including the voter who cast the ballot. When voters cast a ballot, the state of Alabama's voter registration system is updated to document the election that the voter participated in, but no record is made documenting the candidate for whom the ballot was cast. Your name is not on the ballot. Have you ever noticed this? People of Alabama might not have thought that far ahead. And then we have this story that I mentioned earlier from the Washington Post. White women in Alabama have made up their minds about Roy Moore. This is a story that just impugns white women as a bunch of racist Klans people. White women have already made up their minds, meaning your minds are closed and you're for a bigot and for you're a sexual abuser and you don't care whether it's happening to people like you, other women. You're probably Christian, so you're dumb, you're stupid, you're a hayseed and a hick, and you're dangerous. And that's essentially the Washington Post story. That's if there's a tie with the Al Franken resignation, the threatened resignation, and the Roy Moore vote. There's two stories now. Two stories in 2 days on homelessness. Now, for 8 years, the Obama administration, we didn't hear a word about homelessness, did we? I mean, if we did, it's not memorable, and it certainly would not have been a negative. It would have been how wonderful the Obama agenda is at reducing it. So here we are, 10 months into Trump's first year. AP blames booming economy for an increase in West Coast homelessness. This is 2 days in a row now. And I've been wondering where the homeless stories were because they always resurface during Republican administrations. Now, we all know, if you keep track, that Southern California, and, San Francisco too, California homelessness is a problem that has been permanent. And the left in Los Angeles and San Francisco hasn't the slightest idea how to deal with it, and they have only made it worse with traditional liberal thinking and policies. But now, with Trump in the Oval Office and the economy booming, all of a sudden, that's why there's an increase in homelessness. AP, you had to figure that the Associated Press would at some point finally recognize the existence of the nation's booming economy, at least compared to the wait a minute, this is not AP, this is Newsbusters writing about it. At any rate, the AP's the premise of their story here is that the booming economy is leaving people out. The booming economy is unfair. Certain people are not benefiting from the boom, and therefore homelessness is on the rise. Mathematically, common sense-wise, it doesn't make any sense. But then again, the homeless issue has always been a fraud from the get-go. The number of homeless, who caused it, why they exist, and it's always been tied to Republican policies. And I just wanted to note that it's resurfacing. And in fact, here's a second story. AP San Diego's high rent fuels homelessness and a hepatitis outbreak. Like other major cities all along the West Coast, San Diego's struggling with a homeless crisis in a place that bills itself as America's finest city, renowned for its sunny weather, surfing, and fish tacos. Spiraling real estate values have contributed to spiraling homelessness, leaving more than 3,200 people living on the streets or in their cars. It's a new phenomenon. Why, it just now occurred. It just now happened. Only because of Trump are rents through the roof. Only now have rising real estate values happened because of Trump. And what this illustrates, folks, is that the mainstream media and the Democrat Party have a playbook. They are not innovative. They simply go to past pages in the playbook when scenarios exist, and they simply cut and paste what they have previously written about prior Republican presidents and plug the stuff in with the current sitting Republican president. I mean, it's not even any news. They just, it's the thought process. Republican president, booming economy. There have to be people left out. We can blame the Republicans for that. And bammo, they do it. And they search the archives and they find story after story after story from the 80s when Reagan was president, and story after story after story when George H.W. Bush was president, and similar stories when George W. Bush was president, and they redo them and they recycle them and they plug in current people, current events to a basic boilerplate story that constantly exists. Nothing new about it. And as usual, it's packed, filled with, I think it's outright lies, but certainly misinformation. Okay, brief timeout. We'll be back and continue right after this. Don't go away. Welcome back. Great to have you. Rush Limbaugh having more fun than a human being should be allowed to have. This is kind of funny. Grab audio soundbites 4 and 5. David Asman, who, by the way, condolences, his father just died. His father was an amazing media figure in and of himself, Robert Asman. He just passed away. David Asman's a reporter at Fox Business. He's been there for quite a while. He was on the After the Bell program yesterday, co-hosting, and he had as his guest the executive editor from the Weekly Standard, Fred Barnes. And they were talking about me and my comments about the special counsel Robert Mueller and his investigation into Trump. And to start things off, Asman introduces and plays a clip of me from yesterday's program. We have 2 bites here with Asman setting it up, and then the second bite will be Barnes. Here's the first.
It's these conflicts of interest that lead people to believe that it's just a witch hunt at this point. Rush Limbaugh, by the way, spoke to this point earlier today. Let's just play the soundbite and get your response. Go ahead.
The Mueller team is comprised of not faithful and nonpartisan, objective, law-abiding investigators. It is populated by Trump-hating, pro-Hillary, pro-Obama partisans who have been given unlimited money and unlimited purview to use the power of the federal government to implement their political ideas, not enforce the law. Okay, so Fred Barnes was asked to respond to that. Asman said, so it's hard to argue with that, isn't it, Fred? What do you think?
I think he exaggerates a little, but certainly not entirely. I mean, look at the original hires by the special counsel here, Robert Mueller, were people who had been Democratic donors. One of them was a lawyer for the Clinton Foundation. These were people who came with a partisan tilt. Why they were hired, I don't know, but it was clear who they were, what they'd done.
Now, look, we like Fred Barnes here, but what was exaggerated? You know, this is one of those things, well, yeah, so you're playing me a soundbite at Rush, right? So I can't fully embrace that without getting the Dershowitz treatment. So I've got to kind of poo-poo it, but I can't disagree with it because it's right. So what I'll say is, well, he exaggerates a little bit. He did laugh there at the early part of the soundbite. When I or anybody use terms like populated by Trump-hating, that's when they laugh, because establishment types don't talk that way. Even if they think it. Trump-hating, that's beneath our communication guidelines. We just don't speak that way. Yes, they can't endorse that kind of word assemblage, if you will. But the bottom line is that everybody in Washington knows what's going on here. And this boils down to some are willing to say it and some aren't. I'm not talking about Fred Barnes. Fred got his digs in there. But it's one of the problems that we have. I mean, the Mueller investigation is obviously a scam or a sham. The thing is based on a totally false premise, total absence of a crime. There is literally no, according to Justice Department regulations, there's no reason for a special counsel because there is no crime. And yet there's an investigation anyway. And the more people are unwilling to characterize this for what it is, then the less power the analysis of this is going to have. And the American people deserve to be told the truth about this. Now, here's a different take on it, different approach that to some is surprising. This is Donald Rumsfeld. This is last night on Fox. Question, who is a bigger threat to us, Russia or China?
It depends on who's in the saddle in those countries and which one is more likely to make a mistake. My personal view is that the fact that Trump, I don't know President Trump, I've never met him that I can recall, but I certainly think that his demeanor in the presidency is a deterrent for those countries. He's not tucked in and worried and cautious. He's a bold leader, and he speaks his mind.
Whoa!
And it seems to me that people sitting in the Kremlin and in Beijing seeing that are probably respectful of the fact that it's not in their interest to engage in things that are disadvantageous to the United States.
This is big. Rumsfeld admits he's never met Trump. Rumsfeld, many would think, would be of the crowd that would condemn Trump because he's not an establishment guy. He doesn't speak in diplomatic ways, but it's just the exact opposite. Bold demeanor, not tucked in, worried, cautious. He's bold. He speaks his mind, and he leaves no doubt where the United States stands. It's like Mike Pompeo, who is the CIA director. Somebody in the media tried to get him to admit that Trump's tweets are a problem, and Pompeo said, no, Trump's tweets have actually helped us learn vital intelligence. What do you mean? Well, Trump will tweet something out about some of these wackos around the world, and they'll react to it. And when they react, we learn more about them than we knew. I'm telling you, Trump has got that town turned upside down in a lot of ways, and there are people unable to deal with that. This is Jeremy in Jonesboro, Arkansas. Great to have you with us, sir. How are you?
Thank you, Mr. Limbaugh. It's a great honor to speak with you. I've been a fan for a long time.
Well, thank you.
I've actually had all mention of your name banned by one of my professors this semester because your analysis is always so rock solid. So I appreciate everything you do. What I wanted to say was I'm overstatic. I'm completely overjoyed. I'm going to take my kids to get ice cream. I'm letting them get 2 scoops today, Mr. Limbaugh, because I've heard everything you said. I know it's not a done deal, but I'm telling you, I've been waiting for this ever since this guy stole the election. It could not have happened to a more arrogant, hypocritical, high on his horse, condescending, hack, limousine liberal. I think that he's had it coming, and if at the very least this guy can no longer grandstand and talk down to good men, I believe that all this is.
Wait a minute. Who are you talking about? Obama?
I'm talking about Al Franken.
Al Franken.
Sir. Yeah, ever since this guy, I mean, he's just, I've always thought he was a political hack from his days of, SNL and the things that he's done. When he stole the election, he's just, and the way I've seen him talk down to good men, in some of these congressional hearings and things like that.
You're thinking the way he's talked down to Jeff Sessions, I'll bet, right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And I think at the very least, even if, somehow he worms his way out and doesn't resign, I don't think he's ever going to be able to take that kind of position and preach to people and grandstand. And I just think that this guy has had it coming. And when I saw yesterday that all his colleagues were coming against him, it's like Christmas coming early, Mr. Limbaugh. I'm overjoyed.
I appreciate you being honest about this. A lot of people would say, well, I'm very sorry when this kind of thing happens to anyone. You really hate to see it. While privately, you're thinking exactly like you are. But you had the courage to call here and actually tell the truth about your happiness and your satisfaction and even the schadenfreude of the just desserts being handed out to Stuart Smalley. So I appreciate your forthrightness and your honesty, and I understand it. A lot of people had no idea who Al Franken was until the Jeff Sessions testimony, when Franken started berating him, and it was over this Russia stuff and connections and the insinuations that Franken was making against Sessions. So I understand how you feel about this. But he's not gone yet, Jeremy, and he didn't apologize for anything. He essentially said that the women who are telling these stories are lying. He didn't use the word, but he said, I don't remember it the way they do. And he used this resignation speech to build himself up as a great champion of women. So he still has a distance to fall here. If that, meaning you still have opportunities to be even happier than you are today. I'm glad you called. Folks, I want to mention something that is happening, and it's not being commented on. It's in the news, but it's never going to be above the fold because of everything else going on. But the Supreme Court has heard oral arguments on this case involving the baker who refused to bake a cake for a gay wedding. The oral arguments were at the Supreme Court this week, and you can't predict how a case is going to go from oral arguments. People try, but you can't. It's a risky business. But having said that, the oral argument, the questions that we got from no less than Justice Kennedy and Justice Gorsuch on this look like it's good for the baker. To cut to the chase on this, the plaintiff here is trying to make the case that the baker is hiding behind his religious freedom to discriminate against gays. And I'm going to give you a fact of this case that you may not know. The guy's name is Masterpiece Cake Shop, and the guy's name is Jack Phillips. And a gay couple walked into his bakery and asked him to bake a cake for their wedding reception. And he said, no, my religious beliefs prevent me from baking a cake for you, designing a cake. They sued him. The case is at the Supreme Court. And it really is an argument over where does religious freedom trump and what does it trump. And the gay couple is essentially saying, you can't discriminate against us, citing the Constitution. Your religious freedom doesn't give you the right to discriminate. And the justices are saying that's the wrong argument. Because listen, I bet you didn't know this. In this guy's bakery, which is called Masterpiece Cake Shop, a gay couple can walk in and see a cake in the display case and say, we want to buy this for our wedding. And he would sell it to them. What he refused to do was design the cake for them and become part of their ceremony. He would happily sell them a cake, but that wasn't enough for them. They wanted him to design it and to work with them on the designing and the baking and the building of the cake. And he said, no, I don't believe my religious views do not allow me to help you celebrate this. He was not denying them the right to buy a cake in his shop. He was just telling them he wouldn't participate in designing it and being part of the celebration. And they're trying to say his religious liberty in the First Amendment does not allow him to discriminate. And Justice Kennedy had the most amazing reaction to this. Justice Kennedy said, but this whole concept of identity, suppose he says, look, I have nothing against gay people, he says, but I just don't think they should have a marriage because that's contrary to my beliefs. It's not. And then the lawyer, he says, yeah. Kennedy says it's not their identity, it's what they're doing. And this is the nub of the case. Because the gay couple is saying he's refusing us because of who we are, because of our identity. And Justice Kennedy pointed out, no, he's not. Justice Kennedy said, your identity thing is just too facile, meaning it's too broad. You're trying to incorporate way more in your identity politics than you should. It is that there is a big difference in a person's identity and a person's actions. And this guy, the baker, and Justice Kennedy got it. He made the point. The baker never discriminated against them on the basis of their identity. He discriminated on the basis of what they were asking him to do. It was the action they were asking. He was being asked to help them design their cake and participate in the celebration of their wedding, and he said no. Well, they're trying to say he's discriminating because we're gay. And his point is, no, I'm not discriminating. I'm just not going to compromise religious beliefs by helping you celebrate. If you want to buy a cake in here, there's one right there. And from what I've read, the gay couple and the lawyer team are a little shocked by this. Again, you can't make reliable judgments on the outcome of a case. This is still, oral arguments, and the decision is going to happen quite a while down the road here. But this is the big, I don't know, what would you, a distinction, the thing that everybody's been missing in this all along. And I'll bet how many of you knew in this whole story that the baker would have been happy to sell them a cake that was already baked, or that it's a display cake, you can order one just like it. He just was refusing to compromise his religious beliefs by helping them celebrate and design and all that. But he was not refusing their business. The drive-bys never told you that in this story. I got to take a break. We'll be back. Don't go away. Well, that's it, folks. Another exciting excursion into broadcast excellence, sadly coming to a close. It causes people to tear up and cry in certain areas of the country, but it's not necessary because we're back in 21 hours. It'll be Open Line Friday tomorrow. And if I was coming down with something, I'd beat it back because I feel okay now. So we'll see you tomorrow.